Yeah, it's just better.
We're right in the middle of the lightning round here. We'll do the introductions in just a moment. Let's see, uphill or downhill?
Downhill.
Uphill?
Yeah.
Uphill.
Oh yeah.
Why? Torture.
Yeah, but you can hike.
You can hike. And downhill because
It's just so much fun.
it's so much fun. George Clooney or Roger Federer?
Roger Federer.
Yeah.
Roger Federer.
Easy.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs.
Nice.
Cool. My dog is very happy to hear that. And you grew up, Meg, you grew up with like 7 dogs, is that right?
Seven-ish.
7-ish? You didn't exactly know how many dogs you had.
Came and went.
Okay. Welcome to our Run the Alps Rendezvous. My name is Doug Mayer. I'm the owner and founder of Run the Alps. We're here in Chamonix, France. And to prove the point, behind us is Mont-Blanc. And with me here are Sam Hill and Meg Mackenzie. You guys can just go ahead and introduce yourselves right now.
Great.
So, yeah.
Sure. Well, should I introduce? This is Meg. She is a standout world-class trail runner. Runs for the North Face, if you haven't guessed already. From South Africa, but moved to the valley here. Lives down in Les Ouches, just below Chamonix. Moved here like a year ago.
Yeah.
Loving it.
Loving it. Thanks. And this is Sam Hill. He is from the Lake District, a mountain guide and a photographer, loves cooking, and has just moved to the Alps a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Basically just down the street, and he's a trail running guide for us at Run the Alps.
Yeah.
What trips are you doing this summer for us?
I think I'm doing a couple of Tour du Mont-Blancs, maybe a private trip, and the cafes trip, which I'm really looking forward to.
The great cafes of the Alps.
Yeah.
I've wanted to do that for a long time. I'm going to be along, I think at least for a day or two on that.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about getting ready to trail run in the Alps for the season. What you can do at home, wherever home is for you. How we think about it, some of the frequently asked questions that we get. And we're also here to introduce something very interesting involving these two. It's called, after I think 10 or 12 different times trying to figure out what we're going to call it. It's our personalized prep program.
Well said.
Thank you. Do you guys want to explain what that is? Meg, why don't you?
Cool. We came up with the idea, since Sam and I are both running coaches, that to help people prepare for their trips in the Alps and to get ready for whatever they are coming to do in the Alps, that we could help them with a personalized sort of like a training program, but more advice on how to do that, and all the different tips and techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think because it's such a unique environment here, and the trips that Run the Alps provide are really unique as well. And I think for people that I've guided, especially, they've really wanted to make the most of like a once in a lifetime trip, right? Mm-hmm. So why not take some time before the trip to really get it right? Yeah. So that's what we wanted to deliver. Yeah.
So that's the PPP, not to be confused with the PPP we had in the United States, which was a pandemic funding program. Definitely not the same thing. And we're going to be launching that online through Run the Alps. You'll hear a lot more about it this next week on the website and social media and all those good places, and in our email newsletter. And we'll talk about it a bit more too also. I want to just go, what we're going to do is go, right into some FAQs that over now 10 years here in the Alps, we've gotten from our guests about, getting ready and how is it different over here. And we've already gotten some questions from some of you who are joining us today. We'll take those questions. I've got some of those here, and then we'll also take some questions live too. So, and we won't be here for hours. Don't worry. We're planning on about maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. So I'm going to go right into some of the frequently asked questions. Okay. So let's start. Meg, I'll throw this one to you first. Trail running in the Alps looks very, very badass. And we're probably adding to that with this new. We do not run up to the summit, by the way, which is a question we've gotten before. Can you really trail run in the Alps? People often ask, like, is this trip for me? Is Run the Alps for me? Or is it like way too badass? So what do you say about someone when you're looking at, like, 1,000 meters of climbing right behind us?
I mean, I think it's doable. Of course, these are big mountains, and you have to really take into consideration your training and be comfortable with a group that you're with and have a guide and all those kinds of things. But of course, it's totally doable. It's beautiful. There are endless trails around here. So, and I think it's not as crazy as some might think. It's often soft foresty trails. You often start by the river and gradually wind your way up, and it's really pleasant out there. Of course, there's long descents and big climbs, but it's doable.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think the trails out here are actually incredibly well manicured.
Yeah.
It's not like you're running just on the side of a mountain. It's really well looked after because they've had the culture of using the mountains for leisure for years. So the actual trails underfoot tend to be pretty good, right? And yeah, the biggest things you have to deal with in terms of training and preparation is getting yourself used to those longer climbs. You're going up for 1,000 meters and you're going down for 1,000 meters, which is not what everyone has on their front door, right? Yeah. So I think it's totally achievable with the right preparation.
And the misconception I get all the time, I think, is that even when you're watching, say, UTMB, and you're watching the front runners, they're not running up Grand Col Ferret. Exactly. Killian is not running. And if you look at his Strava, his training is like fast hiking, quite a lot of it. So even though we call the company Run the Alps, here's a little secret. We don't really run the uphills, right? I mean, I don't only unless you're like, if there's a croissant, like a really good looking hut with a great croissant, like 200 meters away. But we basically hike and fast hike. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think when you put it like that, it doesn't sound too intimidating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it is.
Sorry,
yeah.
2 seconds. I think something.
Okay.
So we'll just talk a bit louder, and then I'm just going to try and move this a bit
closer.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
This being, we'll just move a little closer and talk a little bit louder.
Yeah, no, a tiny bit slower, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. We have 2 people here helping produce. So Kate and Jen, and we have a special guest coming in at the very end also.
And they reminded us to remind you that if you have any questions live now, then put them in the chat box.
Right. So people always ask, how fast do you go? I can run a 7-minute, 30-second mile on a track. How do you answer that?
Well, I think firstly, when you're running in these hills on these trails, pace is just completely irrelevant. Okay, sometimes I'll think about my climbing pace, so how much vertical I'm gaining per hour, and that's kind of a good indicator of overall time.
Okay.
But yeah, I tend to think about my days running in the Alps, about how much I'm climbing, how quickly I'm climbing, and how many cafes I'm going to. Like they're the most important metrics. I kind of think, and I think if you can climb a steady pace of between 300 and 500 meters an hour, like that's going to get you a decent day's running.
Okay,
that's solid. Yeah, I think it's also important to note that we fixate a lot on pace in running, but actually the body doesn't know if you're running 7 minutes 30 or 8 or whatever. I mean, I don't know miles, but the body doesn't process that very well, and it's important to remember that and not get too bogged down in pace.
It's about how you feel, right?
Yeah.
For the life of me, I could not tell you my pace.
No.
Good.
We here, I feel like we talk about, I went out for 3 hours, I did 1,000 meters and 15K.
Yeah.
Like, just, you kind of get this sense of like, and I had one Tart tea. So it's sort of like, we just kind of describe it. There's no, because a pace is kind of pointless when you're climbing or descending
and when the trails are so
varied and technical.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be running in different terrain, ups and downs. It's all over the place, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's a helpful metric at all.
Yeah. Okay, we've gotten rid of that one.
Get rid of
that. This is kind of related, and it's a question I feel like we get. I'll just go right to it. We have it right here. We have some props.
Oh, nice.
Trail running poles. These trail running poles, as opposed to hiking poles, are very light. They collapse easily. They assemble really quickly. So I'll ask the question that I've often gotten, particularly from Americans who might not be used to them.
Mm-hmm.
What's the deal with the poles?
Oh, but I would love to answer this one.
Okay.
Because as you were assembling the poles, I remember the first day that I bought my poles and you had to help me assemble them.
Oh, really? I've totally forgotten that.
Yeah, I didn't know about pulling them, and I didn't know anything. So I hadn't run with poles before arriving.
These are too short.
They fall all over. So I think running with poles takes practice. And it takes time, and I don't think it's something that, if you don't run with poles, don't expect for them to be very useful at first. I think you need to maybe practice quite a bit before they become second nature and how you use them. I know I did CCC last year, and I did carry poles, but I didn't end up using them that much.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, they were just tucked away quite a bit of the time. So everyone's different. I mean, maybe someone will find them super helpful, but for me, at least, not coming from a background of using them, I didn't find them that helpful.
Okay, we should explain CCC is the UTMB race that literally goes right past the door here, and it's 100 kilometers long. Starts in Courmayeur, goes to Chamonix, Switzerland, finishes in Chamonix. Meg did very well. And it was your first.
With the poles in my backpack.
Your first 100K.
It was.
Sam, let me kind of ask a related question. Why bring them then? Like, what's the point?
I think, well, I was kind of the same, like coming from the UK and initially like a fell running background. You're not allowed to use poles to race with. So when I came to the Alps for the first time to run like 5 years ago, it was really quite new seeing everyone using them. And I think when you're doing long sustained climbs, and especially maybe if you're not used to doing long sustained climbs, it really does kind of help propel you up the hill a little bit, keep you upright. And I think when you have the that kind of compounded nature of doing hills over and over again, I mean, some of the longer stuff I've done, I've definitely felt like I wouldn't have been able to finish if I didn't have poles. But I think, if you have runnable sections or downhills, putting them away for most people is the way forward. But I think it depends. But for most people doing these long hills like we have here, I mean, you see everyone with them, right?
Yeah. They also help you to get in a rhythm, like as you use them, and like just the mental aspect of going up for so long is helpful.
Okay, we're going to do two more FAQ questions. Then I want to talk a little bit about the PPP program,
nice.
And how that came about, and then we're going to do some very embarrassing questions.
Great.
Because it's just kind of who we are. That'll be fun. Let's see. Looking at the questions here, people get asked this question a lot. Start with Sam, maybe. Do I have to acclimatize to trail run in the Alps?
So that word acclimatization, that people tend to think about altitude,
right?
Which is kind of not as important to altitude acclimatize when you come into the Alps, especially to do the runs, the kind of runs, the trail runs that we'll be doing.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily get too worried about the actual elevation you're going to. the highest would be like 2,500 meters. So what's that?
Yeah,
Or-
7,000-8,000 feet.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
you're only
it's
there
really
for-
not that high.
And you're there for a very short amount of time.
Right.
But I think things like when you talk about acclimatization, thinking about maybe it's going to be probably quite hot in the summer, so maybe some heat acclimatization.
There's that acclimatization,
Yeah.
which is another issue.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and then acclimatizing to the type of running, so the training that you do.
Right.
So,
Right.
but the altitude,
The altitude
Not
is really a
worried.
non-issue. I mean, we're looking at glaciers here on Mont Blanc, and those start at around 3,000 meters or around 9,000, 10,000 feet. And we're not running on glaciers, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of us have, some of us will, but we don't do that on our guided or self-guided trips. And most trail runners are not going to be doing that. So not going to be an issue. So, okay, Meg, we know you're with the North Face, so we understand that you're going to have to get the North Face out there. But I think you can still be unbiased with this question. What kind of shoes are good for trail running in the Alps?
I would just say to stick with shoes that firstly are the most comfortable. So a lot of people may think that because they're now trail running in a different place, they might need completely new shoes or new type of shoes. But actually, comfort is a big deal, especially when you're doing a multi-day trip and a lot of miles. So definitely comfort is first. And then having something with a solid grip, I would say, is really important. Yeah, comfort and grip are kind of my two must-haves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stan?
Yeah, I'd always say kind of fit over function. So yeah. The comfiest kind of things that you've got, but they need to be sturdy.
Yeah.
They need to be able to deal with some loose trails.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't need to get more difficult or complicated than that.
Yeah, I think people, there's so much choice out there, but it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Yeah, you don't need to go and spend $150 or whatever
Right.
they are now.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you don't need to get into like building Frankenstein shoes, which some of us have been known to do. If you want a particular shoe for a particular course or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, something comfortable.
Yeah.
Good. I want to talk a little bit about the personalized prep program.
Well done.
Twice. This kind of comes out of people who have signed up for a Run the Alps trip. And by the way, this can be anyone. We're not going to limit this just to Run the Alps folks. But people who maybe it's a big adventure and a big challenge, and they're a little concerned about how they're going to do. This is a little something extra to make sure you feel really comfortable and that you get the most out of your Run the Alps trip, or whatever you're doing over here. Maybe you're getting ready for a race. These two are very modest, but they are really wonderful coaches. And what we developed was not a coaching program, which you may already have a coach, some you folks at home. It's more sort of gathering together some information, getting some tips. I'm going to shut up now. Tell us about the program. So, what does it consist of?
So I'd say it consists of advice giving in a personalized way. We really want to take people who may have some doubts or insecurities or questions about running in the Alps, and together we would, with either one of us, we would help that person to get the most out of their trip and the most out of their training without being very prescriptive about exactly what they should be doing every day in their trail running and training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so ultimately, should I go a little bit into the logistics of
Yeah,
how it
that'd be
would work?
great.
Yeah. So ultimately, what we would like to offer is a 1 hour consultation. So basically, if you have these questions, anxieties, uncertainties, and would like some support to get ready and to make the most of your trip, then we would jump on a call with you, and we'd talk over all those things, and we would offer a little bit of advice over the call, but we'd mainly try and get as much information from you for us to then inform a document that we would send out to you guys with heaps of advice that is really personal to you and your training and where you live and the job that you have. But like Meg said, it wouldn't be Monday do this, Tuesday do that. It's more kind of this week we would like to include these types of things so you can make it flexible yourself. Does that sound about right?
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Well explained.
Yeah, we're pretty excited to be able to offer this. I mean, I think for people who are on the cusp or, want to, something a little extra to get ready for their trip or whatever it is they're doing in the Alps, it'll be a nice thing to offer. You'll get information on it. We have your email addresses if you're watching this now. So we'll send you some information this coming week about our personalized prep program. That's
You're
the last
getting
time.
better.
That's the last time I'm going to say it because three for three, man. I'm not going to be able to get past it. Now I'm really looking forward to this part. I'm not sure I know the answers, although I know you two pretty well. We're going to ask Sam and Meg a few questions about their own trail running, starting with your most embarrassing trail running moment ever.
You go first.
Meg.
I have a standout moment.
Yes.
And it's probably going to put a lot of people off coming to me for coaching.
You're like, forget Mackenzie. I can't get that thought out of that vision out of my mind. It's okay. What was
I was running a how to trail run workshop, which involved teaching people how to specifically run uphill or run downhill. There were a couple other things. I was on the downhill section, so I was teaching people
how to run down
specific methods. And starting at the top of the hill, I said to everyone, okay, I'll go first. And I took a couple of steps and had a really bad fall. Did a few tumbles, cut my chin open, sliced my knee. There was a lot of blood.
You're like, that's how you run
And
downhill.
then I was like, who wants to go next? And a bunch of people standing at the top of the hill.
Were
did not want
were
to go
people
next.
like, is she okay?
like-
you're like, you're an ambassador for the North Face? Do they know? Have they seen this?
Things have improved. Sam.
It happens to all of us.
Exactly, yeah,
okay?
exactly. I've done exactly the same when I've been
Yeah.
guiding. It's like, right, let's do this technical downhill. Watch how to do it.
Yeah. Watch how the guy does it.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your moment?
Mine's maybe a bit more graphic. To warn you. So,
Okay.
I was doing quite a long race. So we ended up finishing in about 120 hours. So it was quite a long race. And on the first, after the first 24 hours, I guess, I got really, really bad chafing. Yeah,
We've all been there.
we've all been there. But it got to the kind of stage where I said to my partner, you had to do it as like a pair. I think we're gonna have to drop out.
Oh,
It was that bad. It was that bad. So I was like, right, okay, let's take stock. So I got naked from the waist down and just started to try and solve the problem.
Okay, we don't need to get specific,
No,
but the chafing was below the waist.
it was below the waist.
Got
yeah.
it.
So I was there on the trail,
Okay.
probably like 9 o'clock in the morning, naked from the waist down, and these two guys come around the corner, and I'm just there kind of dealing with things, and they just look at me and I look at them. We didn't say anything.
Eye contact was made.
It was, yeah, and they just kind of walked off. But the thing is, the nature of the race, because you're sleepy at different points and stuff, we kept yo-yoing with these guys. We kept meeting, and we just like have this knowing little look between us.
Yeah. Were they like, give that guy a little more room?
Yeah. And the kicker is that maybe like a year ago, I was running a trail literally just over there, and I saw one of these guys. I had to go up to him. I was like, hey, I'm sorry, you probably don't remember me, but we ran in the PTL together. And he was like, oh no, I recognize you.
Was he like, I do remember you.
What a scene cannot be unseen.
So there we go.
We'll have to leave it right there.
Yeah.
So it was PTL.
Yeah.
Which Sam, being from the UK, is genetically too modest to say that this is one of the hardest races in the world. It's the PTL is a multi-day race, highly technical through the Alps. It's part of UTMB, but they don't even really consider it a race because it's so incredibly badass. It's off. A lot of it is off trail on technical ridges, and it's been known to cause extreme chafing.
Let's draw a line under that.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. It's a family show. One more awkward thing, and then we'll end on a really good note.
Okay.
Worst race moment ever.
Sam.
I can't quite think of a race moment, but
Okay.
I guess it's similar. So
Is it another chafing?
it's not,
Yeah, really.
wow.
No more chafing.
Okay.
We're done. Okay.
I think genuinely the worst, where I was probably the most concerned or scared or worried or whatever. Was last May. I did something called the Charlie Ramsey Round, which is, if you've heard of the Bob Graham Round, which is in the Lake District, it's like the Scottish version. So it's in the Scottish Highlands, and it's like 100 kilometers with a bunch of, and you have to go up all these mountains. Anyway, I was doing it solo and unsupported, which means you have to start with all your food and water, and there's no support. And I was trying to do it in under 20 hours. And being Scotland, I just assumed that there'd be water everywhere. It always rains in Scotland, so there'd be water everywhere. So I started with all my food, and I maybe had a liter to start off with in some bottles. And I was running, and I finished a liter of water. And I'd looked on the map beforehand and seen that there's creeks and streams to fill up, but they're all dry. There was no water. And I was running for probably about 6 hours on 1 liter of water. I got to like a little, puddle in a rock. And it was, I don't know if you've seen or read Touching the Void. It just had like
you're touching the void moment.
Totally. I was there just sipping water out of these little rock pools. And yeah, it was awful. Like, I couldn't eat food. My mouth was so dry. And eventually, after about 10 hours, got to a big valley river. I just stuck my head in it.
Oh, it must have been so nice.
Yeah, it was the best.
Yeah.
But it was very worrying. That was probably my worst experience. Kind of racing. Yeah. Racing the clock.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Meg?
I think mine is the most recent race that I've done.
Yeah.
I raced the
Oh,
Trail
yes.
Ventoux, which is a race a little bit south of here, and I did not wear appropriate clothing. I did wear clothing. It wasn't appropriate.
Unlike
clothing.
Sam. Right.
And it was about 10 degrees at the start, so I thought that was hot enough to be in shorts.
10 degrees Celsius.
Oh yeah, it's Celsius.
45, 50 degrees.
So mild, right? Fine.
Yeah, Fahrenheit. And we should explain Ventoux in French.
Yes, windy.
Windy. Meg is learning her French, one race at a time.
So this was part of the blunder, is that I think I missed a memo in French about the race course, A, getting changed, and B, being very, very cold. So I wore shorts and a singlet thinking I'd be fine, and I definitely wasn't fine.
You were cold.
It was very, very cold at the top.
And
I lost the plot a little bit.
And you told me too that you had lost a glove or something.
I
also?
did lose a glove, and the jacket ripped. It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing. You missed the
It was
memo.
a very snowy, cold, windy French thing.
Some email came in and said, c'est très important, il faut vraiment, ça va être très froid. And you're like, can't be that important.
They want us to do well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Must be good tidings that we're sending me. Okay, well now
So learn
you
your
know.
French.
Trail Ventoux. It's windy.
There are some
Okay.
great pictures you put up.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't
actually,
even
it was
smiling.
good.
Yeah.
You can of course you can follow both these folks. Meg has, if you go to Meg's Instagram, there's some good Trail Ventoux photos.
Yeah,
I think, right?
grumpy.
I saw something grumpy. You're never grumpy. Let's see. How about let's end on a nice note before we go into some other odds and ends. Actually, go to your questions. Best moment ever. I know we have a lot of great moments in different ways, but what comes to mind is like maybe your best moment. Let me put it in the Alps here.
Yeah.
Best moment trail running in the Alps. You want to?
Oh man, that's a big one.
It's interesting to hear your perspective because you're relatively. I mean, you spent a lot of time here over the years, but you're new here. Like this is basically been 1 year that you've been living here in Chamonix.
I think one of the best moments was it was actually over in Switzerland, but not far. And Hilary Girardi and I had gone running with Kim Strom, you'll all meet her too. And we went glissading into a really, really icy lake. And it was just the best moment of glissading on a trail run into very cold water and then carrying on. It's quite beautiful.
Great.
A bunch of friends.
Mhm.
Cool.
That sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Sam, how about best moment trail running in the Alps?
So it's really nice because it's how a lot of runs finish. So it was the end of that race that we were just talking about, where luckily I dealt with the chafing and had managed to carry on. And it was the last moment. So the race finished going from Tête au Vent, which is the just kind of right up there behind us.
Almost see it.
Yeah.
Basically can.
And it's it's the last high point on the UTMB race as well. And from there, we just ran the UTMB course back down into town. But yeah, we've been running for like 120 hours, carrying these big backpacks. And there was CCC finishers still running on that part of the course. And, we were beat, but the adrenaline just kicked in. And we both felt amazing. We were just like sprinting past these other runners on the trail. And I just remember like running the zigzags down to Floria and running into town. And, it's probably the fastest I've ever run down that trail. And it just felt incredible. It's like whooping, hollering. I'll always remember that. And what's really nice is it is a trail that you often run. It's like a nice circuit. So every time I'm coming down there, I just think about that moment and how good I felt.
Well, that's
I'm very impressed, and I'm gonna try and take that for myself. It is an incredible part of the race to feel good.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I know it was totally miraculous to us. Just the adrenaline of finishing.
I think that I'm going to get off topic for a minute, but I almost wonder if that's like what they call the central governor theory. Like you're done.
Yeah.
You've accomplished this enormous Herculean. I mean, the PTL is amazing, and you're finishing like one of the most important trail running moments of your life.
For sure.
It's like, and you somehow find energy, huh? And you were just cruising.
Came out of nowhere.
It's really cool.
About halfway down, I was like, right, I need to have a gel just in case. Get into town and just faint.
Make sure this is for real and you're not going to end up in the emergency room.
Exactly.
Let's go right into, talking about preparing for trail running in the Alps and answering your questions. I've got a few here, and then maybe we'll, with Kate's help and Jen's help, we can get some questions. Here's one from a guest, Anna, who's coming on one of our trips. I plan to arrive to Italy a few days before Run the Alps, before the Run the Alps running trip in the Dolomites. Coming from sea level in the US, in San Francisco, what would you recommend to do in those few days to deal with jet lag and acclimate to higher altitude? And we actually kind of talked about that. Maybe that's less of a concern, but I want to talk about people traveling a long ways. I mean, that's a 9-hour time difference before the start of the trip. Like, what would you recommend for someone? And you've done a lot of traveling from South Africa, not necessarily big time zone change, but a lot of travel. Sam, you've been all around. What would you do before you're getting ready for a big adventure like this?
I think routine is really important. I think getting into routine as soon as you get here and getting some sort of schedule can be helpful. And it might feel a bit counterintuitive because maybe it's a big, trip and maybe a holiday, but it definitely helps you to regulate your body and your eating and your energy levels and things like that. So that's definitely one of the first tips that I would give is schedule and routine.
Yeah. I mean, and it's the same when you talk about like preparing for a race, the few days before a big race, you talk about routine and not changing too much. And obviously there's a forced change with the travel and the time difference, but as much as you can do to live your normal life, the better, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Just being kind to your body. I mean, we talked about the altitude, and that's not so much of an issue, but getting out and doing some gentle hiking would be a good thing.
Get some fresh air, move your body, and then get some sleep and good food. Setting yourself up for success.
Exactly.
I think.
Okay. Let me go. Kate has sent me some questions. Thanks. I've got a few more here. And then we'll go to the questions that we're getting from you right now. Let's see. Here's a question from actually another California. Sarah in Berkeley, California is coming on a trip in July on the Tour du Mont-Blanc. Should I expect snowfields up high? And if so, what should I be bringing? Now, actually, we should say some of this we cover in, those of you who are coming on Run the Alps trips will have seen this, our guide to trail running in the Alps. And there are answers, Sarah, don't worry if you haven't read it. There are some answers to that in here.
Homework.
No.
That wasn't like a weird passive aggressive thing. What about snowfields up high on the Tour du Mont-Blanc?
Sam knows best.
Oh, okay, let's go to the guide.
So yeah, I mean, this year it might be different because it's been a very, very low snow year. But yeah, there are some sections where you would expect a few small snowfields. Usually, depending on what time your trip is, but if it's kind of July onwards, there'll be really good steps cut. A lot of the guides that are working on the Tour du Mont-Blanc, say, will early in the season have shovels with them, digging trenches and stuff like that. And the amount of footfall, the amount of traffic that you have on the trail just causes really nice, easy trenches to get through. I think that's where poles really help, actually. So having poles with you when you're crossing snowfields is really, really important. And if if you are self-guided, maybe you would, if it was a big snow year and there were some big snowfields and it was cold, some micro spikes may be helpful.
And avoid the rocks.
It's something that especially early season you come across, but it doesn't tend to turn people around.
Okay, we got quite a lot of questions coming in here, which is really great. We won't get to all of them, so we'll try one way or another to get answers to you. I wanted to take a question here just because it's near and dear to me. This is from Arthur in New Hampshire, which is where I'm from. I've been here full time now for 3 or 4 or 5 years. What would be the best trails to run in the White Mountains in New Hampshire to get ready for a trip to the Alps? And this is a favorite, it's a pet question of mine. Sorry, I just have to put up with me.
Go.
Go with it. The White Mountains are really, really good training for the Alps. And I still write about a lot of the racing going on here for US magazines. One of the things I consistently note, and it's not a criticism, I just notice it, is like people coming from out west are used to more switchback trails, and they oftentimes, if they're racing at a serious level, they're pretty surprised when they get here. If you come from the White Mountains where the trails go like that and they're technical, you're pretty well set. Really, any of the 4,000 footers are great training, and the proof there is folks like Hillary Girardi, the Black Diamond athlete and a friend of ours. Katie Scheid, also a good friend who runs for On, both from New England, from the White Mountains, and they have been absolutely crushing it over here. So you just get out on the White Mountains, really, any of those trails, any 4,000 footer, you'll do well. That's a New England thing that's really there's a good connection there in terms of the training. So okay,
done well for those guys.
Near and dear to me. Let's see. From Atashi, do you recommend carrying water in bottles or a bladder or both? And I would add to that, what's the deal with water in the Alps generally? So
maybe both if you're comfortable. Personally, I run with bottles in the front. I don't use a bladder, but I think it's perfectly fine to have a little bit extra if you need it. And that kind of equals you out in terms of weight, or at least that's how I imagine it sometimes. So I think that's great having both. In terms of water in the Alps, getting a little filter for your bottle would be very handy. I don't personally use it all the time, but I know a lot of people do.
Mhm.
So that can be very helpful to fill up with streams. There's almost always water unless you're in a pickle like Sam with a puddle. There's a lot of water around, so you shouldn't run into any trouble.
And you always, every few kilometers, you'll come across a hut, a cabane.
Yeah.
You can,
Right.
they'll either have a water fountain, or you can buy a can of Coke, which is really nice.
Or you can buy a glass of wine, although
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend hydrating with that.
Yeah.
Let's see, from John, what extra kit, and let me translate kit for the Americans and in the crowd, myself included, gear. What extra gear would you carry in the on train? He says on training runs, rain, extra layers, first aid, etc.
Yeah,
well, let's go to the guide.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, whenever I go out, I tend to always think about worst case scenarios. So
smart, opposite to Trail 1 2.
Yeah, yeah, right. So like, I think the weather. If I roll an ankle, and I have to walk myself off the hill, then am I going to be able to look after myself? So it's always really weather dependent, time of year dependent, and having enough layers to deal with that worst case scenario. And I always, especially if I'm going for a long run, maybe not just up and down from the house, but if I'm going for a long run, I'll always take some kind of small shelter, like a small foil shelter that I can get inside if it like all goes really bad. I'll always take that on the long run. Is there anything that you would do?
No, I think that's super smart. And I think also if you do have some strapping or some bandage, anything that you can like tie tight just in case you cut yourself on a rock, or that's really helpful. You can use a buff, but I think having a strap is very, very helpful.
I agree. I think because UTMB specify that little bandage thing, don't they? Right. And I've heard of a few people that have just had that in their pack just from having raced with it and and had to use it in anger.
Oh, that's what I bring. I mean, that's my one key piece of first aid item. The sort of stretchy, elastic. First, it's actually vet tape in the States,
right?
And it sticks to itself. That stuff's really good. Yeah. So anyway, very important question here from our friend Mike Gray, who came on our Mimi Kotka trip.
Hey Mike.
Yeah, one of our we've got a lot of great guests, but Mike's pretty special. Blueberry or raspberry tart?
Blueberry.
Me too. It's unanimous.
Easy.
When you can just like pick them off the trail as you're going up as well.
If you have to ask the question. While we're talking about trips, actually thinking of Mimi's trip, I just want to mention just quickly, if you know anyone who's interested in learning to trail run or learning improving their trail running skills, we're doing a trip, a really cool trip in the Swiss Engadine, and then in Zermatt this year, which is our first learn to trail run and work on your skills trip. That'll be really fun. We have 1 or 2 spots left on our Courtney DeWalter trip. We have a couple spots left on our Mimi Kotka trip, and somebody else here is doing a Run the Alps trip. Meg, do you want to tell us about that?
I'm hosting a woman's only, sorry guys, trip in late June. So that'll be ladies only, and it'll be a good time. Come join.
Yeah, that'll be really fun.
It's gonna be great.
And you're gonna have some special guests too.
Yes, lots.
Okay.
All secrets.
Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. I have a special guest that I want to introduce in a couple of moments, and a little bit of a surprise also. But I want to do 1 or 2 more questions here. Let's see, from Oliver. What if I'm a rather slow downhiller? Good question. Yeah.
In terms of like being as part of a group, I guess.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I think, firstly, like on a guided trip, there's a decent amount of emphasis on improving skills as well. So there'll always be some coaching. And I think the really nice thing about the guided trips is that they're usually just a great crowd of people, and everyone kind of supports each other. So it's not really a big deal if people have different strengths and weaknesses, because it all kind of evens out in the end. And I think it's just a great opportunity to get better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say, maybe don't let that put you off. It's definitely something that can be overcome and helped, and you can learn to love it.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. We're getting quite a lot of questions.
That's
Okay.
great.
So we'll have
Thanks.
to we'll
find
get
a way.
answers to everyone. I'll just throw out one more question here to you before we introduce a guest and do a little surprise and wrap it up here. People who have not run in the Alps before, this is actually, I think, a really good question. Are restrooms available? What do you do for bathroom breaks when you're out there running the Tour du Mont-Blanc?
I just pee in the woods.
There you go. That's right.
Easy game.
Easy. Sam?
Well, I think it's beautiful. It's obviously a beautiful place, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a wilderness, right? So there
Right.
is quite a lot of infrastructure around. Every couple of hours you're going to be coming across either a mountain hut or a village. So there's kind of plenty of opportunities for refreshments and relief.
Like what you did there.
That is one of the real benefits of running here.
It's
There's
great.
always a hut around the corner or some
Yeah, you can
small
always
village
get
or something.
And
So-
going back to that question that someone asked about kit that I always take when I'm going for a run, like some cash, because
exactly.
you need to be able to buy some blueberry tart
Or a train home.
or train
I
home.
can see.
Yeah.
The worst thing is to get to a hut and not have the money for a slice of that tart
Right.
that's freshly baked.
Yeah.
That is Alp trail running suffering. So I want to introduce a special guest who's here. Now this is where all chaos takes place. Oh, this is our director of hospitality and ambassador of joy. Is he? And there we go. As we say goodbye, I wanted to thank everyone for tuning in here. And Sam and Meg, thank you. And we also want to say Meg is just down from a hut in the Alps where it was her birthday.
Yay!
And so
I'm so
we don't
hungry,
have a
so this
candle,
is
but we
great.
did have a match. It just went in and it just went out. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Meg.
Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Thanks
Tart-
for
Tart.
joining, everyone.
There you go,
Yeah.
Mike. Tart
Blueberries.
Blueberries. So, hey, thanks a lot for joining us, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
and we have croissants too.
Oh, this is nice.
You see, we did it without her knocking